The zombie pitch. So, what's it like to be a zombie? I'll save you the effort of asking because we both know that's what you're thinking. Right? Or, more to the point, what the best part of being a zombie? Well, I'll tell you one thing, it's not the loss of dexterity. I've really only got 2 fingers capable of typing, so this tale will be a significant labor of time. However, in a fortuitous twist of fate for you, dear reader, time is something I suddenly seem to have a lot of. My schedule has opened considerably, what with the apocalypse and all, and I no longer find myself monitoring the clock and placing any importance on its significance in the progress of my day. The person who said, "I have all the time in the world," had no idea what that truly meant. While I digress, I feel it's only fair to inform you that leaving a point open-ended or letting a train of thought never reach the station will probably be a consistent theme throughout my narrative. Since this wasn't really an issue when I was, I don't know, let's say, alive, I can only surmise that this may be due in some part to the fact that my brain is beginning to rot in my skull. I do my best to keep my head cool in regards to temperature, but there's only so much a guy can do these days. No power mean no air-conditioned duplex. No air-conditioned duplex means a cool creek can do in a pinch. Everything has a fine line though, everything. Even in a cool brook one has to keep a close eye. The second you see a bit of hair or a chunk of flesh go merrily down the stream, you got to get the hell out. So what were we talking? Oh yeah, the best part. Well, let's see, there are actually more to consider than you might think. Is it the general sense of camaraderie and sharing of resources in the zombie community? Perhaps it's the ability to rediscover the real world after being held so tightly in a virtual one for so long? You probably have no idea how nice it is to just unplug your intelligence and free yourself from the thoughts that imprison you, except for the hunger for brains, of course. Is it the freedom of schedule and the opportunity to finally see this great country? The cardio is fantastic, and if you can hook up with the right horde, you'd be amazed at how entertaining a long road trip can be. Plus, I probably don't need to tell you, as I'm sure it would go without saying, but the women. Oh man. The ladies of the horde are aplenty and as dirty as I'm sure you would imagine them to be. While it's true that the dirty is literal, plenty of mud, blood, fecal matter and whatnot in a horde, these girls can be freaks as well. Zombie chicks are the shit. Imagine really hot goth chicks hell-bent on getting some meat in their mouths. Now imagine them in a significant state of decay, writhing and fighting to eat the living. Granted, it's not ideal, but easier to make work than you might think. But even the constant party atmosphere isn't the best thing about being a zombie. It's the fact that I'll never have to buy another piece of useless crap again for the rest of my undead life. I will never again have to walk into a Walmart or a Target for milk and bread and walk out with a shower curtain, garden hose, pasta strainer and a Snuggie. I will never again need to walk into a post office for stamps to mail my rent and utilities to the only companies left who don't believe in electronic payments. If I do ever find the need to enter a post office again, it would only be because a young Hispanic mother and her 8-year-old daughter had barricaded themselves inside and were making their last stand with their golden retriever, whom they called Lala and which barked incessantly over their terrified sobs. Just as a hypothetical, of course. That is the best part. You've not tasted true freedom, my friend, until you're at a point in your life where you don't have to worry about the free market grind. You know what thoughts I never have? Did I grab my wallet? Do I have my credit card? Do I need gas in my Yugo? Should I pick up a 6-pack of Zima? Do I want to buy Aerosmith's new album or Kool Moe Dee? If I stop at a Blockbuster, which VHS cassette should I rent? What aerosol hairspray should I get? I guess I should mention that I died in 1987. Do I need this or do I need that? Do I have enough of product A or product B to get me through the night? Honestly, the only product I really think about at all is, well, tasty brains, but if we are being truthful, then I have to admit that's really only an indulgence as well. I'm not eating out of necessity, and you really don't want to know where the things that I do eat ends up. Let's just say smooth running bowels aren't really synonymous with my condition. Indulgence might not be the right word for the brains. I don't need them in the physical sense, but the urge can be so strong sometimes that addiction would be a better fitting glove. I was actually really embarrassed by the compulsion at first. I thought it was my own personal failure and kept it very close to the vest. I called them my private delicacies, not wanting to give away the true nature of my revolting cravings. Turns out, the symptom was more widespread than I'd imagined. So widespread, in fact, that there is actually a bit of competition for my delicacies. If I'm being perfectly blunt, some of these fools are really starting to piss me off. You put in a good, hard day's work, tracking and stalking a victim, and the second you get to the good stuff you're surrounded by a crowd of bums trying to wrestle in on your action. I will beat a fool who comes after my goodies. I will tear their arm off and beat them into a pile of mush. I will tear my own arm off and mush them. I'm a bit of a workaholic. Sorry, that's not true. It's more of a hobby I'm greatly invested in, a hobby that I find myself singularly focused on with laser intensity. If you must put yourself in my shoes, then think about how much time you spend looking at porn, and you should be able to equate. I'm aware that I have a problem, but the one thing the zombie community is painfully short on is any type of outreach or self-help programs. There's no, "Hi, I'm Chuck and I'm addicted to chowing gray matter." So given the circumstances, it's only fair to warn you of the consequences. You don't want to mess with my delicacies. If someone's cool and shows respect and patience, then yeah, I'll share with them. It's not like I don't have a heart. I think, kind of hard to say at this point, but you get the gist. Don't mess with my brains and I'll do my best to manage my addiction. It's really quite silly anyway. I can't actually taste anything, not at all. Frankly, I don't know where the compulsion comes from. I can't taste anything, and for the most part one can't feel anything. I consider this a benefit as well. Could be a firm handshake, or could be you just cut my hand off. If I'm daydreaming at all, I wouldn't know the difference. I keep telling the guys from the Horde, you gotta pay attention. It's crucial, you gotta pay attention. Do my pleas fall on deaf ears, you ask? Considering the majority of the ears were no longer attached. You could say that. I know that you might find this to be detrimental, but let me ask you this, how do you feel right now? I don't get headaches or a sore back or arthritis or hangovers or any of the things that you get all the time. I don't get sleepy or sneezy, any other issue of diminutive stature. I get plenty of fresh air and exercise and don't worry about stubbing my big toe. Or the next to the big toe. I believe I've lost my big toe, but that's beside the point. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself that this sounds too good to be true. Zombie life, or transhuman as the left-wing undead like to call it, sounds like the only way to go. Why on earth would I ever want to keep living as a walker? Oh yeah. We call you guys walkers. You know, because of the way you guys are able to just, well, walk around and stuff. Most of us can't really do that too well. That being said, the term shufflers is highly offensive and you may not be looked upon in high regard if you choose to use it. If you hear one of us say it, that's different. We can use that word. Within our community, it's seen as a form of unity and is us taking the hateful power that you walkers gave to it away. You should only refer to us as zombies or undead Americans. Anyway, I can see that you're ready to turn in your walker status and join the wave of the future. You're ready to join Team Zombie and take your first steps onto the ladder of success. These feelings of excitement are natural. We want you to know that we're just excited about the prospect of you coming aboard and contributing to the greater success of the enterprise while impacting on a personal level. We think you are zombie material and believe that the one thing that could push us over the top is you. I know, I feel it too. Before you can jump into this exciting endeavor, however, you need to be told about the downsides. I don't want you to walk away from this today, dear reader, having thought that I was some type of snake oil salesman who tried to sell you the happy side of a donkey without revealing its ass as well. Everything in life has two sides, the sun and the moon, the yin and the yang, the mountain and its reflection in the lake, the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Who has a penis? You need the entire bill of sale before you make such a momentous decision. You need to know it's not all team-building exercises and seminars on synchronized swaying. There are a few, let's just say, quirks that you may not be thrilled with. The first of which would have to be the permanence of the transition. It is very much that, permanent. The actual procedure is quite expedient and depending on your ability sustain a number of bites in a short amount of time can be nearly instantaneous. Of course, there are scenarios where the process can take a bit longer depending on your ability to remain unbitten and, of course, hack and shoot well. But these are extreme circumstances which agents rarely encounter in the field and really not worth devoting a lot of time towards. So yeah, permanent. Also, there have been occasional issues with fairly isolated cases of crew members losing various body parts due to extemporaneous deterioration. That being that, we've been able to do some amazing things with duct tape and leather jumpsuits. Are these corporate BS puns doing anything for you, by the way? Another consideration I should mention is the maggots. You really can't feel them at all, but I've been told by some that they're an irritation. It's hard to keep them out and when you get them. Well, you know how when you go to the beach you keep finding sand everywhere for weeks after that? It's a little like that. If you fixate on the critters you'll start picking and then you won't be able to stop. I knew a girl named Latasha who literally picked herself apart. That poor little white girl picked and picked until she was half a torso and one arm. Even then she couldn't stop. Poor, sweet Latasha picked until her arm and head fell away. Don't get too upset please, dear reader, imagining this sweet mother of three lying in a pile of separated limbs and flesh. She was able to get rid of all the maggots, which was a tremendous victory for her personally. Also, she was anorexic and the loss of weight had greatly improved her self-body image. A mutual friend set her head up with a guy named Winchester, who was also just a severed head. Being an interracial couple, some people had their doubts, but they're still together today and living with his mother and her boyfriend who we suspect is putting his hands on her, but no one can prove it. You'd think it wouldn't be that hard to do since he's the only one in the household with actual hands. Not to mention being a player. Leroy's a slick one. He's got an excuse for everything. Why are you with that woman, Leroy? Ah, well, see, she said she knew a guy who had some brains for us down the way, so I was just gonna see if I could get some brains for us, because you like brains baby and I like you, shit, love you. So much love and brains because I'm your man, and brains. Why are you coming out of that woman's bedroom, Leroy? Yeah, yeah. You see, this crazy woman I do not know asked me to walk her dog and I said, bitch, I ain't walking your dog, I'm gonna eat your dog, and then I ate her dog and that's when you saw me coming out of there. Plus, I was getting you some brains, baby. There's really no catching him in a lie, and now we don't even try. F. Leroy. Why did you even bring that punk ass up? Kind of off point, wasn't it? So anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted. Maggots. They can get behind your eyeballs. Usually they'll just push your eye so that it's looking in a slightly different direction. I know it might seem like a disability, but I've seen some amazing people overcome this to not live their amazing lives. Sometimes, what you focus on is more important than what you see. Worst case scenario would be the maggots pushing your eyeball out of your head completely. This usually works in two ways. First would be a complete exodus of your eye from your physical persons, at which you'd have the brief side of your face from an angle you've never seen it before for your memory banks, and then nada. The second version is the one which keeps your eye attached to the optic nerve and dangling from your skull. I've been informed that this is not entirely undesirable and provides the different outlook on things. Think GoPro camera. Also, maggots will eat your penis away. Some reports seem to reflect some dissatisfaction to this regard, but c'est la vie, I say, easy come easy go. Other than that, the maggots. It's all peaches and cream and gray matter Sundays. No life is perfect, dear reader, but I think we both know that this is the life for you. It's time for you to stand tall and join the revolution. You will be in the in crowd for once. You can't cast aside your inhibitions and start sporting the morgue. You can use that, by the way, if you want to. I'm trying to get it trending. Remember Madonna's Vogue? It's supposed to be like that. I've already gotten it copywritten before you get any ideas, douchebag, but again, feel free to use. You look pretty badass, lady and sir. Thank you, we're morguing. So just put your hands up and... Morgue. I know, right? Since I can tell you're confident about the decision to go zombie, I've got some good news for you. I know you've been hem-hawing about the way to go. Should I go with a little nibble? Should hang myself in the closet? If that's confusing, I'll clarify. You already have the zombie virus in your bloodstream, and all you have to do now is die to turn. Yeah, that stupid continuity filler is actually a thing now. Don't blame our apocalypse on Hollywood's lack of originality. And anyway, you need not fret over the particulars of your transition. I've made the experience painless and nearly unnoticeable. A small speck of infected blood mixed with an epidermal absorption chemical dropped onto a small area can be enough to turn a walker. A small area, like say the down arrow on a keyboard. A little drop and keep someone occupied for just enough time to read a short story. See you soon. The Pocket Watch. Did you get this spooky story? Write the comment. When I was a child, there was nothing to eat. I was the eldest of 5, so it was my job to make sure that I always let my brothers and sisters eat before me. War was inching inward from the coast, and as it marched closer, our food grew scarcer. Animals fled the area, or were slaughtered and consumed in panic by the other families in our village. My father was a wise and cautious man, and so we waited to slaughter our 2 chickens until the fall, when grass and tree bark had become too hard to find or inedible. The other families knew we had chickens, and father stayed up all night, every night, to watch over them. He had to kill at least one boy from a neighboring town who had gone mad with hunger and tried to burn down our small home with a burning branch. When the chickens were not but bones and the bones had grown brittle and porous from mother's many soups, my parents sent my 2 eldest siblings and I out to collect bugs and field mice for supper. We were hungry, but not quite starving until one morning we woke to the first frost and there was nothing alive left to eat. My parents began to discuss the inevitable. Perhaps my father should go to the coast and sell his father's pocket watch to one of the drunken, but well-paid soldiers. It was the only thing we had of value and the only family heirloom my father had to pass down to me. I didn't want him to go. I was afraid war would arrive while he was gone, and I was too young and too weak to protect my mother and younger siblings. I begged him to stay, but he insisted it would be all right and promised to be back within 2 weeks. I was so scared that when he and mother were outside preparing his satchel, I smashed the pocket watch under my foot and placed it back in my father's half-rotted desk. My mother cried for days. Father did his best to comfort her as I watched them peel the leather from my father's boots and boil the hide for dinner. The next night, mother found a dead rat and boiled away the disease with the new fallen snow from outside. The next evening, she filled our bellies with rat bones and more melted snow. My little brother Albert kept everyone awake that night, crying over his hunger. He begged for all the things we'd eaten when we had a garden and animals: beef stew, white rolls, succulent corn, and spiced lamb. He made all of our stomachs moan and torture us, and I soon screamed at him to be quiet while my mother sobbed from her room. Father stroked Albert's hair for hours and then went back into his and mother's bedroom, shutting the door behind him. Albert moaned until the thin light of dawn peeked through our threadbare curtains. I could hear father in his room, tinkering with the watch. My hunger had long worn out my fear of soldiers, and I silently prayed that he could repair it. Father worked on the pocket watch all through the day and into the night. Celia had found dead crickets in the walls of the abandoned bakery, and as we ate them, Father emerged from his bedroom with Mother right behind. The smile on his face was one I had almost forgotten, as I'd not seen it since the day my youngest sister was born. He told us that he had repaired Grandfather's watch and that he'd heard of a soldier encampment nearby. 3 days, he promised us, 3 days and I will return with carrots, lamb, and rolls so big, they'll fill our bellies for a year. We clapped our hands in delight and ran around our small, dirt yard with a glee that seemed a foreign language to us. Father said that we were all to help Mother find beautiful things with which to dress the table. The next morning, he gave us all a piece of rubber from the sole of Mother's shoes to chew on and sent us out on our mission after kissing us goodbye and promising to be back before we'd remembered he had left. We had such fun that day, gathering horseshoes and shards of broken glass. We threaded bits of twine through the horseshoes to hang above the table and tied the glass to the ends, hoping they would shimmer in the lamplight. We returned home as the sun set, happy with our day's work and eager to return to it tomorrow. We weren't yet in sight of home when I first smelled it: onions, chicken broth, spiced lamb, even sweets. I ran as fast I could, dropping our table dressings carelessly along the way in my maddening pursuit for food. I burst through the door to find Mother at the stove, preparing our meal in a quiet reverence. I threw my arms around her and asked if Father was home already. Yes, my love. He had the fortunate chance of meeting a wealthy mercenary on the road who was only too happy to buy your grandfather's watch. I hugged her even tighter and sat down at the table as my brothers and sisters came spilling through the doorway. They found their places quickly, hungry, expectant looks upon their faces. Father came out of the bedroom and took his seat at the end of the table as Mother brought over a steaming platter of spiced, boiled lamb. She nodded at us and we filled our hands with the rich meat, hardly bothering with our plates. After dinner, we were sent to bed with full tummies, barely a word having been said by anyone since our food had been set on the table. We ate our fill the next night and then the next and the next. But as our food stocks started to dwindle, so did Mother's health. Each day bled more out of her until we were left fighting over scraps of raw meat while our mother lay weak and wilting nearby. The first night I went again without food was the night that the hazy, happy ether began to lift and my memories of the past few days became confusing. I recalled that the spiced lamb I'd consumed with such ferocity had actually been sickly sweet and the accompaniments I had first smelled from afar had never been brought to the table. I couldn't remember Mother eating anything in all the days since Father had returned. Instead, she'd sat quietly next to us at the table, staring at the pile of gray meat we consumed with such fervor. And Father, I couldn't recall hearing his voice since the morning he had left for the soldier encampment. His chair had sat empty, night after night, and as the peripherals of my memory formed shape, I couldn't be entirely sure he'd ever been there at all, at least not since the morning he had cut pieces of rubber from Mother's shoes at the table. Frightened and starved, I didn't find sleep until the darkest hours of the night. The following morning when Mother emerged from her room, I asked where Father had gone. She told me he'd left to become a solider and sent us out to peel bark off of the bushes in the forest. Father never returned. Perhaps the reason I didn't realize what happened back then was because it was too awful to consider, and I was so very hungry. But Mother died a few days ago, and in death, she thrust the truth upon me. From her stock of meager possessions, I was bequeathed a small box that contained nothing more than a shiny, broken pocket watch. Perhaps she wanted me to remember it all, the only hope of our survival that I'd smashed under my heel. My father's last, loving hug before he sent us to collect dressings for the feast. The overly seasoned gray meat. And the rancid smell that had begun wafting out from under Mother's door, becoming more pungent each day. My father sacrificed more for his family than most ever would. I used to lament that I had nothing to remember him by. No family heirloom to pass down to my own children. But now I have his pocket watch, a thing I cannot give to my children. Not because the glass is shattered. Not because the gears are cracked. I cannot part with the watch because it is a curse that I must bear. For the shiny, Contorted metal has never lost the sickening smell of that sweet, silvery meat.